This video is sponsored by Blizzard's Warcraft Rumble. Welcome to our third and final part of our three-part series. In part one, we looked over things like basics of miniature painting, such as base coating, shades, undercoating, all the good stuff of getting you onto that hobby train. Part two looked at more advanced things or intermediate stuff, such as highlighting, dry brushing, glazing. So in this video, we're going to combine all those things and paint a big old dragon from Warcraft, Onyxia to be precise. Now, before we crack on painting this dragon, let's hear a little bit more from our sponsors. Warcraft Rumble is an action-packed strategy game that invites players to assemble armies with their favourite characters from the Warcraft universe and battle it out in unique missions designed to test their tactical wits. It's easy to learn, but hard to master. Warcraft Rumble's frantic strategy action is immediately gripping, with depth that rewards experimentation. Build forces of minis, starting with leaders like Archmage Jaina Proudmoore, with a huge single-player experience with over 70 missions, as well as weekly and monthly challenges in the form of multi-part dungeons. There's so much to keep you busy. You can also play with your friends in competitive or cooperative play, and join guilds to link up with fellow commanders. There are over 60 heroes, villains, and monsters from the Warcraft universe to choose from, and these are lovingly sculpted digital characters that have been rendered as tabletop-style minis and brought to life for you to collect. Warcraft Rumble is full of authentic Warcraft vibes created by the team with deep roots in the franchise. Everywhere you look, you'll encounter many references inspired by beloved characters, locations, and events from the Warcraft PC strategy games and the World of Warcraft. As you can see, we've already got hold of our Warcraft Rumble characters courtesy of WePrint Miniatures. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and get downloading. Right, back to painting and rambling about techniques. So with that all said and done, let's crack on painting this dragon. Now the first thing I'm going to do is get this model undercoated. Now I'm going to start with a black undercoat because Onyxia is pretty much black. Now initially, I was going to give a nice dusting or zenithal of some purple. I had some purple, like hand purple heart from AK, but it was just too windy. And as opposed to trying to do this nice zenithal highlight of purple to get the membrane in the wings and like the spikes and spines and stuff, I just didn't bother because I knew it would just be a mess because of the wind. So I chose just to go with black. That was easy. And then do all the rest by hand. So sometimes when you are painting, effects such as the weather can decide how you go about the next steps. And in this particular case, the thing I wanted to do, which was to speed it up a bit, couldn't do. So, because it was too windy. So good old brush time. So with our undercoat now dry, I'm going to get some rubber black and I'm just going to heavily stipple this over the body. Now with stippling, it's very much like dry brushing. You're not really removing as much paint or pigment from the actual brush, but you are doing a stabbing motion. This is going to give a bit of a texture to those flat surfaces on where its scale should be. There are no scale details on here, but it's just to add a bit of detail and also looks quite nice and gives a nice pattern as well. After the rubber black, we're going to do the same with dark grey, a little bit more refined, a little bit lighter, mainly touching on some of the raised areas, but just take your time and build that up. Then I'm going to use a light stipple or even a light dry brush of reddish grey. I'm going to do this a little heavier on the horns and also the bit down the front, sort of like that chest area. Again, this is just to add a slight different tone to those details because they are kind of, I guess, different materials or textures on the dragon. Now for the wings, or the purple on the wings, as well as the spines, I'm going to be using blue-violet for this. I'm just going to base coat it. I'm going to have to do a couple of coats because this is going over black, but because I'm using blue-violet from AK, it's got a lot of pigment in it. It's quite good. But remember, thin the paint down first. Don't use it straight from the pot, as we discuss in part one of our three-part series. Also, when base coating this, whether you do this on the first one or even the second layer, try and follow the strokes that flow with the wings. So the membrane kind of is flowing downwards in kind of a vertical kind of effect. So if you do your stripes or streaks when you are actually layering this, it kind of gives a flow to the wings and looks a little bit more realistic. Also do this on some of the horns. There's a few scattered around. I had a look at lots of different art. Some of it was contradictory, but it doesn't really matter because you're getting the vibe of Onyxia here. So just check some reference. We've got some art here that we used. There's some purple spines down the back on some bits of the wings. So just use what reference you want to. And the same for any dragon or any model when you're painting. Have some reference at hand. I'm also going to do a soft dry brush of purple around the feet because there's a bit of an orange to purple fade in the art. So I'm going to try and mimic that. So first of all, I'm going to get the purple on there and eventually move up to orange later on when we get to that colour. Now I'm going to get light rust for the feet. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a gradient where you can see some of the purple. So I'm going to lightly dry brush this over the feet. I'm also going to use this on some of the spine fins as well. Again, following the flow of the fin. Now I have a whole bunch of areas now base coated. We've only got a minimal amount of colours here. We've got black, some dark greys, some purples and some oranges, but I'm now going to coat all over with some wash. I'm going to use Black Knight from AK. I like the deep shade. It's got a nice matte finish to it as well. But what you will need to do, because it is a large model, is when you start applying this wash, you might want to get some water, dip it in, and then just put that on some of the raised areas, and that will help the flow go into the cracks a bit more. But as I've said before in the previous videos, do a little bit of wash, make sure it's not pooling too much in the wrong places. So this is the time where you could normally leave your model to dry in its own time, but you might want to check over because it's quite a large model, especially if you're doing any kind of dragon or monster. So just go on wash. Now you can use medium when you are thinning it down. I just prefer water as it's easy accessible and does the job. But if you want it really thin down, then I would recommend using some medium. Next, we're going to tidy up the purple and orange details back up, applying it in a streaky method like we did with the base coats. This works for things like the wings and spines, and it really looks like stretch skin as well. So we're just going to relayer those areas. So both the purple, we're just going to tidy that back up, and then the same for the orange as well. Next, I'm going to mix in some pale sand for the highlight on the purple. I was actually struggling to find a decent purple tone, so in the end I just went, I'm just going to get bone, mix it in, because it is a bony kind of texture for the horns anyway, and also looks quite nice on the wings. Then for the orange fins, we're just going to highlight up with light orange. Again, very similar to the purple stage we've just done. For the carapace around the breast and also the horns, I'm just going to use some reddish grey again. Again, we use that as a dry brush, but now I'm going to start doing like some streaky motions just on the front and around the horns. This is kind of like an edge highlight, but it's also to add some texture there as well, so it looks like a carapace or like a bone or a horn. Again, take your time. If you're making mistakes, just use some of the previous colours from before, so those dark greys and blacks. To add some texture to the skin, I'm going to get some neutral grey and then start adding some nicks and scratches in there as well as picking out some highlights like on the knees and stuff. Again, this is to add some more texture because it is quite soft, it is quite flat, but that's fine because I love this kind of stuff because you can make it your own. You can add some extra details in there, make it look a bit more scarred or battered. Then I'm just going to get some Black Legion for the claws. There's a few select ones on like the chest and elbows and stuff like that, so just check over which ones feel right to paint and just paint them straight over with Black Legion from the pot. I'm not even going to thin it down. I just want a nice solid black. And also when using a black, because we've got lots of dark greys, charcoaly kind of colours, so having a nice jet black here with the Black Legion will help those things feel like different textures as well, because there is a danger things can look like they're made from the same stuff. We'll come to that with the purple wings and the horns in a bit as well, because they are highlighted the same. They're both two different ones, like a leathery skin and one's like a horn, so we need to try and find a way to differentiate those two together as well. But yeah, just gonna slap black over those claws. Now, I was just talking about the purple wings and the horns looking very similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to glaze over the purple membrane on the wings. And for this, I'm going to use some amethyst blue and a little bit of blue violet. So the blue violet was our base coat. Just going to add a little bit of a darker tone in there, which is the amethyst blue. Mix them together and really thin them down to a glazed consistency. It's a bit like a wash. And all you're doing is loading up your brush, but not too heavily because we're not trying to do a shade or a contrast here, and then just neatly layer over that area just to knock back those highlights and maybe dark or lighten up or darken up, depending on how you want to do it, some of the deeper recesses as well. And what this is going to do is give a slight different finish to the wing membrane in comparison to the horns. So they will look like two different textures. I'm also going to knock back the orange a little bit as well with a glaze because those highlights are a bit light. So I'm just going to thin down some light rust and then apply that over the fins as well. I'm also going to add this to the frontal carapace. Now, in a lot of the art, it's a bit more orangey, but I just wanted to have it a bit more bone with a nuance of orange. So it's up to you how you want to do that. But that's what I'm going for. Just a little glaze. Now I'm going to pick out the eyes with some volcanic yellow. Normally, if you're using yellow straight over black, you probably want to start with like a slightly darker, more pigment heavy yellow, but actually it's only a small area and I'm only doing a little dot here and there, so you don't really need to do lots and lots of layers. So I'll probably do 2 coats on the eyes of volcanic yellow. It's a good yellow, it will cover well. Then just get some black for the pupils, just drop that in there. Try not to make them look too like comical, so trying to have the eyes facing the right way. It's up to you if you want a comical dragon, it's your choice. And then you can use white here to add like a little bit of like light to the pupil. I've got some pale sand at hand, so I'm just going to use that instead. It looks light, it works. Now in this video, I've talked a little bit about separating textures, making them look different from each other. Some ways of doing that is glazing, like I've done with the wings. Another way, and also dry brushing as well, adds a texture. So for like the horns or like the body, I've used stippling on the body, I've used dry brushes on the horns. For the claws, I could highlight them all up with like dark greys, but then that'll start to look a little bit like the skin. So a really quick and simple way of trying to get a whole different texture is just to gloss them. And that's what I'm going to do with all the claws, is just gloss them. They are just like really super shiny black claws. Because like a lot of bone and claws are quite shiny anyway, because of the chitin chitin. Drop it in the comments the correct terminology. Whatever it's made of is quite shiny. And it's a really quick, simple way. So flat black, gloss varnish, done. You don't have to put any more effort in than that. And light does all the work for you. Oh, and don't forget to drop a little into the eyes too, because we want those eyeballs looking nice and shiny. And then all we're going to do now is base the mini. Now, if you want to know how to base the miniature, we did cover that in part 2, so check that video out if you want to know how to base it using the same colours that we've done. Well, there we are. We've had quite the ride with this series of videos. I've really enjoyed doing it, going over some basics, intermediate stuff, and then putting it all together in this video. So hopefully you found some good tidbits in here as well to help you with your painting journey. Initially, when I first saw these models, I thought they were quite simple, and that's not a negative. They're quite large models and they're quite simplistic in their design, but actually I really enjoyed that side of it because you can add details, you can add the chip, and you can add, sometimes models can be overcomplicated, and I really like these because I can add what I want to. I've got more surface area to play around with. So if you don't have any of these, do check out getting some. Now, if you do know someone with a 3D printer, you can probably ask them to print some stuff out. They are great fun to paint. And thank you to Blizzard, obviously, for giving us the opportunity to do these 3 videos. The game's great, so check out the game as well. I know we obviously talked about that near the start, but it is a cool game. And it's Warcraft. Who doesn't like Warcraft? Thank you very much for watching this video. Do check out, like I say, our other painting videos, the beginner steps if you're new to the hobby, and also our intermediate level stuff if you want to add some extra details to your models. And if you know all that stuff anyway, hope you enjoyed the video just painting a dragon. Till our next time, we shall see you soon. Farewell. I can't think of anything dragony to say to sign out, so I'm just going to go caca, caca.